Okay, I'd like to call the public hearings to order. We have two public hearings tonight. These public hearings are being held pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act. All members of the public will be given a reasonable time to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaws that are the subject of these hearings. All information, correspondence, petitions, or reports that have been received by noon today concerning the subject bylaws have been circulated to council and are available to the public as part of the meeting package. For each hearing, staff will provide their report, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to speak. Members of the public who have pre-registered to speak have been added to the speakers list in the order that requests were received. Those pre-registered will be provided the opportunity for public comment according to the order on the speakers list, followed by comment from those who have not pre-registered. Anyone who has not pre-registered can still attend council chambers and wait to speak following those on the speakers list, or alternatively can electronically participate by calling the conference line during the live hearing at 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID number 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. Speakers will be asked to state their name and civic address. Please note that all representations, whether written, verbal, or electronic, are available to the public for viewing as part of the public record. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker and should include all the relevant information in their presentation. Further opportunity will be afforded to all members of the public to speak a second or third time with new information only once all persons have had an opportunity to speak. Council may ask questions of staff, the applicant, and the public, but once the public hearings are over, no new information can be received. Council debate on the bylaws will take place during the regular council meeting following the conclusion of the public hearings. At that time, any questions of staff will be for clarification purposes only. The corporate officer will now provide information on the notice of these public hearings.
So notice for the public hearings was given by posting on the notice board at Municipal Hall and in the Summerland review issues of November 3rd and 10th. In addition, for public hearing number 1, 24 notices were mailed to area owners and occupiers on November 2nd, 2022. And for public hearing number 2, 27 notices were mailed to area owners and occupiers on October 28th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll turn it over to, or do I ask the corporate officer if any written submissions of, what order do I do this?
So for public hearing number 1, 2 submissions were received. So that's for the Lakeshore Drive South. 2 submissions were received regarding the application, both opposed to the application.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll turn it over to the Director of Development Services to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just wait for my slides to load up. Okay, great. So the district's in receipt of a rezoning application to rezone 2 existing parcels at 12210 Lakeshore Drive from RSD1 to RDH, which is a residential duplex housing zone, and also to have some site-specific provisions, which I'll get into, primarily to facilitate the construction of a new duplex building that will overlap these 2 lots. Next slide. The OCP designation of these parcels is low density residential, which does accommodate the existing single family residential use, but it also accommodates duplex housing, forms of duplex housing within low density areas. I already mentioned that the RSD1 zoning, this is our standard single family residential lot, and it's the current zoning for the property. Next slide. So I mentioned the zoning bylaw, including site-specific provisions. You can see them listed here. I will get into each of them in detail in the following slides. But primarily, all of these site-specific provisions as part of this rezoning is required for the proposed three-story duplex building that's being proposed to be constructed here on Lakeshore Drive. Next slide. So the proposal itself is a duplex building with basement suites to be located on the basement floor of the building for each half of the duplex building. So it would be a total of 4 residential units at this location across the 2 residential lots. Next slide. And you can see here, just in terms of a zoning comparison chart of the existing zone versus the current the proposed RDH zone that's being requested. The lot area that's being requested is 524 square meters, and also lot width of 15.2 meters. So that does seem larger than the maximum here, but keep in mind that these are existing lots that are fairly small and smaller than these minimums from the RSD1. But given the historical lot layout of the Lower Town area, currently the lots are 7.5 meters in width. So the RDH zone allows that for side-by-side duplexes that lot area and lot width can be halved for the calculation of each half duplex unit. So that works out to these calculations work out to the existing parcel sizes for these 2 parcels here, 524 square meters and also 15.2 meters. As well, I mentioned some other site-specific requests, floor area ratio in terms of density, front setback, which I'll get into the reason for that, and then also a step projection into the setback for the front as well as the interior side, and then finally a height to increase the height from 9.5 meters or 2 stories to the lesser of 11.05 meters or 3 stories. Next slide. So the concept plan again here just shows this. These are the basement suites being proposed in terms of floor plan. They're 2-bedroom units, fairly small rental units. The applicant is not proposing to stratify the building, so they will be available for rent for whoever purchases each of the half duplex units. Next slide. The proposal as well, you can see the floor plan here for the remaining levels. And the main level has the living and dining area, and then 3 bedrooms on the second level. And then finally, the third level is just for the rooftop patio and stairwell, and that's the reason for the height variance primarily is that rooftop patio area. Next slide. I mentioned already building height. Total building height is 11.5 or 3 stories. The stairwell you can see from this elevation projects much farther higher than the top of the second floor level, and that for that reason there's a need for that height variance up to 11.05 meters. Next slide. In terms of the site plan, our works department has provided us comments that no new accesses are recommended to come off collector roads in the future when there's an alternative access point, and that's something that's been included into our driveway access bylaw. So given that these 2 properties have access to a rear lane, it was our staff recommendation that they orientate all their parking to the rear of the building. And you can see that they've done that, but design change here with having all 6 required parking stalls coming off the rear lane. I do want to mention as well that they have requested a corresponding front yard setback reduction from 6 meters to 4.5 meters to accommodate that tandem parking coming off the rear lane, which is also built into these site-specific request here tonight. Next slide. So the applicant has provided us some streetscape drawings here of what the height would look like from Lakeshore Drive in Lower Town. You can see it's a pretty similar form and character from the single-family dwelling to the south of the proposed building. It's a 3-story single-family dwelling that's located to the south of it as well. There's another duplex building located to the north. It's a yellow duplex building. You can see it's also very similar form and character from some newer development that's occurred within the Lower Town area. Next slide. So in terms of the official community plan, the district's OCP encourages a range and diversity of housing options and also to diversify from predominantly a single family housing stock in our urban areas with access to community services. In addition, the allowance of duplex suites does provide an opportunity for a low-cost housing solution that can add to the district's affordable housing supply, with that rental suites being provided as part of this proposal. And then finally, I want to mention as well that that new growth and development is encouraged where there's no natural or hazardous areas on a property, and also avoids wildfire risk, which this proposal does meet those criteria as well. Next slide. In terms of density, the OCP recommends an upper limit of 22 units per hectare for low density residential areas, and the proposed duplex building with 2 suites being included in that would equate to a total of 38 units per hectare. However, staff does want to recognize that the 2 single-family homes with secondary suites could be constructed on each of these lots with the existing zoning, and that the higher density calculation of 38 units per hectare is only a result of the historical build out of the lots in Lower Town being of this narrower lot width variety that you see within that neighborhood. And with that, I'm happy to take any more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We don't go to questions for the, no. So he's trying to throw me off.
Sorry.
So I understand the applicant might be online. Did the applicant want to say anything? We'll open the public hearing now. I believe not. Okay, so we'll ask members of the public to come up. We have 2 pre-registered, so I'd like to ask Lori Retzlaff to come to the podium and just push the button there. So the red should come on. There you go. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Lori Retzlaff /Hengel, and this is my husband, Barry Hengel. And I have lived at 5309 Butler Street for 20 years. And so the proposed property, their back would look into my backyard. So I would have no more privacy, but I did expect something to get built. My main concern is the parking right now. Already with the 4 units that I do approve that have been built on Beaver Street, I guess 10 years ago, they have garages. The homes are very nice, but the alley is congested already. Only going east to west, I guess, they can only have 1 vehicle, and same with that parallel to Lakeshore in the alley. You can only have 1 vehicle go down. You can't have 2 side by side. So already it's bad. It's just an accident waiting to happen. I just do not see how 6 vehicles are going to be parking back there. So that's one of my main concerns. The other is I don't see any garage area in the buildings, especially if the basement's developed. I don't know where they're going to store their bikes, their paddle boards, things like that. So that was just another concern I had. The other is the height. Back in 2017, 2018, when our friend Rob built the yellow house on Lakeshore, one of the tall buildings, and then Edgar, who we know built the other tall house with the rooftop patio, they went above than what we even expected. And so when they were building it, I could look out my front window. I could still see above the house. I could see the mountains. And once they were said and done, and they put the structure on top of the rooftop patio, you can't see mountains anymore. So that's my concern, is that and I have been in the houses, and when you're up there, you are up very high. And I don't really mind the rooftop patio, but I find having a structure on that really takes away from the view around you. So that's my concern with the height. But my husband has.
I'm going to defer till after. We'll let
Are you?
Michelle, yeah, I'll come up after because it's 5 minutes each, right? So I'll take a full 5 minutes
sure?
after. Yeah.
Okay, that's allowed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I'd like to ask Michelle Tennisco.
I have a package that I will offer when I'm done. I'm Michelle Tennisco, and I've contributed to our community as a paramedic for over 32 years, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 38 years. I live in the greenhouse, the older Victorian that was beside or to the north of the said property. I understand it was built around 1907, and it was the home of A.T. Robinson, Reverend A.T. Robinson, who is the brother of J.M. Robinson, one of the co-developers of Summerland. It's not a historical building as a designation, but I believe it has contributed to the picturesque housing that we have enjoyed here in Summerland. In fact, the museum in OK Falls is also a kit house, as what I believe mine is, although I haven't found the catalog it came out of, like a Sears and Roebuck catalog, for example. My concern, there are two of them. One is the front yard setback. The variance is to make it 4.5 meters versus 6. I would like it to go back or stay at 6 so that it will match the newer residences that are gone in, Edgar's and Rob's, as were indicated, as the newer one to the south, and the yellow house to the north on the other side of Butler Street. The reason for my request for keeping the setback the same is that when you look at the placement, the footprint of the house on the property, the stairwell on the north side is constructed, or would be constructed, in such a way that I would lose all access to my south side of my house. This is significant because apparently, according to these drawings, the ones that have been shown already, and a picture I've supplied of my house, I only have 16 inches of setback from my house to the property line. So if they build what they would like to build exactly where they're requesting, the stairwall going from the back alley to the front will totally block my access, not only to any way to wiggle down the side of the house, but to the crawl space, which is the only access I have to all the utilities to my house. The question about parking, people will park out front. If you look at Edgar's house, one can easily see that not only is there ample parking out back, given where his house is, but there's also ample parking out front because he's paved it, and one can easily see there's plenty of room for parking. I would suggest that nobody who lives in the basement is going to be parking in the alley and hiking down the steps to the front, which is their only way into the basement. They'll be parking out front on Lakeshore, as I have to. When the houses on Beaver Street went in, there was an agreement to have them also pave the alleyway. That changed its elevation, and I no longer have access to my garage. So if their structure is back where it would be so that the fronts match Edgar's, potentially this whole wall of stairwell and ramp would leave me access to my house. Have I paced it out? Yes. Have I measured it out? No. So I'm only hoping. My second request is actually the setback on the north side actually be made bigger than 6 meters. Sorry, that's the front. The side is 1.5. I would like the side access to be increased from the 1.5 meters that it is. That's not, they didn't ask for a variance there, but I'm asking that it actually be made bigger so that I maintain access to my house, given how the elevations are going to change between the two homes. I would also ask for site-specific criteria to include that they not be allowed to build a fence on that north side of their property, because then again, I'm not sure how I'm going to wiggle down 16 inches down the side of my house to do any servicing of my house or access my utilities. Any questions?
Thank you very much. If you could just leave whatever you wanted to leave for us with the corporate officer,
Thank
that would be appreciated. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak, please come up to the podium and state your name and civic address.
Hello, Barry Hengel at 5309 Butler Street. I think the biggest thing that pops into my mind is what's next. You know, Lowertown is just well known for its historical and traditional aspects. And I think if this building goes in, it just adds to one more aspect of like, what next? It's reminiscent of the Chicago River skyline. You know, it's like no longer is it got that kind of homey comfort to it anymore. I'm dialing the clock back to when things did start to change in Lowertown with John, I forget his last name, but he built the house to the west of the Presbyterian Church down there. And at that time, I think around 2008, he was directed specifically by council that he was not to go outside the traditional aspects of the neighborhood. And so that's a very nice colonial home, if you know that home beside the church there. I think maybe John Mitchell was next, and he built a beautiful home on Lakeshore there. The Singler brothers came in on Beaver Street, and well, the homes didn't really conform to the neighborhood. They still were, you know, suitable, nice single-family homes for, you know, smaller lots. And of course, poor Rob and Cheryl, rest in peace, Rob. I think that yellow duplex did him in. It was that building was sold to the neighbors as a bill of goods, and of course they had to endure 3 or 4 variances, and all were approved. Of course, the height variance exceeded what they were supposed to build at, and of course they couldn't knock down the building. They had to backfill the front lot about 2 or 3 meters of backfill. So, you know, and then Greg and Nicole, or Edgar, right, the building beside the new proposal, and Greg and Nicole next to them, they built before Edgar. But that's really what it comes down to, is what's the precedence, you know, like what next? Are we gonna go into multi-condo plexes down in Lowertown? That's kind of the big turning point. So I think if this building goes in, that's kind of that's gonna be it for Lowertown traditional historical aspects, and anything's a go. You know, it'd just be, the next proposal will be 4 stories. So that's my concern. This sets precedents. Rob and Cheryl's already did set precedents. So we got to dial the clock back here a bit and say, you know, what are we doing? Do we want to protect Lowertown, or is it just a free for all? And we're looking at the Chicago River skyline. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Call for a second time. Yeah, if somebody wants, yep, go ahead. Just step up, yep.
I just wanted to add, ironically, my house was the picture house in the 1996 community plan as the theme to potentially maintain within our community. And I know that's changed. I've read the wording of all the different community plans, but if the very front page of this application states going for community and the cultural, respecting our culture and stuff like that. I think maintaining some of our theme has its value.
Thank you. Anybody else for a second time? Anyone in council have any questions for either any of the speakers or the Director of Development Services? No? Councillor Peak?
Thank you, Your Worship. One of my questions, and it relates to a question from in one of the letters from our community member, which is that the top of the building that has the patio on it, can it be closed in?
I'll direct that to the Director of Development Services.
Are you, just to clarify the question, you mean closed in the future?
Yes.
The risk of that? Okay, thank you. I don't think it would be designed that way. There is a stairwell, you can see on the elevation drawing, that's the access point to come up into the rooftop patio area, and it's kind of a box area, but it would be very difficult for it to I would say, like, to be retrofitted. I guess anything is possible in the future, but retrofitted so that that whole area is an insulated, lived-in area. It would definitely trigger a building permit. It may still trigger further variances if it goes up over and above that vestibule area, because that vestibule area is not probably the equal height of a story height, if that makes sense. It's just enough height clearance for you to walk up onto that rooftop patio area. So it might trigger a further height variance in the future. So then future council would probably weigh into it, but it'd be highly unlikely, I think, that would happen, except maybe a long ways down the road, perhaps.
What you're telling me then is there's no prohibition on something going on the patio area to close it in?
Any building, through your worship, to Councillor Peaks, that any building can be retrofitted, and any application we can receive, and potentially if there's a variance required, it comes forward to council for consideration.
Thank you. If I could have a subsequent question? Thank you very much, Your Worship. The aspect of traditional facades, which rather does occur on Beaver Street, and as was pointed out by the public, is perhaps more acceptable in the area. Is there an option for designs for that building to look perhaps less modern and more traditional? This 3-floor building that would go up if it's approved.
If through your worship, to Councillor Peak, that might be a question better answered by the applicant. I believe he is in the attendance. If you're asking about the design, in my view, there is some precedent already established for the lower town area for this type of form and function. Mentioned that that single family dwelling to the south is a 3-story similar type of structure, as well as that duplex building. I am aware that the Yale duplex does have some controversy around it, but the community, it has undergone some change with development pressure already, and this is just another step in that direction, I guess. But it is a pretty, I would say, healthy mix of unique design, in which makes it a unique neighborhood for that reason. The modern versus as well traditional and kind of standards. So yeah.
Is it possible to speak to the applicant?
Would the applicant want to comment on that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Start.
Yeah, no, I think that, like Brad already said, the precedent is already there with the modern homes. And I think that that's kind of the direction we were looking for in terms of design and structure. In terms of respect, we have respected kind of the lower town regulations and rules and kind of the homey feel to it. In terms of the drawing, obviously there it is a black and white drawing, so you're not able to see the color and some of the materials that will be used there. So there are ways to make it look a little bit more better once you see it in a full 3D rendering.
Could I ask about the color and texture? Because you're right, I can't tell.
Yeah, again, that hasn't been finalized as of now, but yeah.
Thank you. One question to the
We'll
planning-
ask, I'll just ask Councillor Trainer if she'd
Thank
get
you.
hers in. I'll come back to you. Thanks. Councillor.
Oh, sorry.
My question is for Brad. Brad, can you remind us off the top of your head, do you know if there's anything in our OCP about design or themes for Lower Town?
There's through your worship to Deputy Mayor Trainer, there is a Lower Town development permit area. Unfortunately, that area is to the north of this area. It's kind of the resort and going northward into the new Oasis building is part of that development permit area. As well, our development permits don't apply to low density forms of housing. That's something under the Local Government Act. So that's not something we can evaluate for this specific proposal, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Can I have one more question? Okay, can you remind us the reason for the setback reduction on the east side, so the front of the building, to 4.5 meters?
Yeah, that was to accommodate the tandem parking coming off the laneway. So there was proposed to be 2 parking stalls back to front to back coming off the rear lane. In order to get the dimensions for both stalls, they needed to move forward the building closer to Lakeshore Drive.
Is there any consideration taken for how a structure might, given that this is going proposed to go forward a little bit in the design, how that might affect neighboring houses?
Through your worship to Councillor Trainer, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Trainer, that is definitely a consideration. I think some of the newer homes have been constructed at that 6 meter mark, but a lot of the historical homes are much closer to the road. I believe the one directly to the south of this building is a little bit less than 6, so it probably wouldn't look too obtrusive coming off the streetscape. Additionally, because there's no accesses coming off of Lakeshore Drive proposed, so that probably would help with creating a yard space in front of the building.
Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too am wondering about the front yard setback, and it looks like the neighbors to the south, they have they've paved right onto the road access, the right of way, and their driveways look like they're right on, they're half the road right away, and they park in front, and nothing seems to be that far forward. Maybe and it's done to accommodate you want to have no parking on the front. You want to get rid of parking on the front because it's a main collector. Is that the reason? Yet there is
Yep.
all this other parking, and I can see that point, but it's reduced by the fact that the parking on the rear is just a lane. And so, I mean, I could go with that concept better if there was something rather than a little bit more than just a laneway on the back that can accommodate one car at a time. The other part that I wanted to check with you on, so the side setback is 1.5 meters, the stairways can intrude on that 1.5 meters and they don't count. Is that correct? And that's why the neighbor to the north will have trouble accessing her services and meters and such that are on that side of the building.
Through your worship to Councillor Barkwell, to answer that last question first, yes, steps can project up to a certain point into the yard setback. So yeah, those steps can do that. I do think there will be space left still to accommodate access. I think they're proposing 1.2 meters still, so I can't remember, maybe a little bit less than that. I can't remember off the top of my head here, but there will be enough access to still get through. Yeah, I guess that would be the one thing with regards to that north property line. With regards to your question on the front yard setback, definitely our works department is quite strong on that now. We've had issues on a lot of our collector roads, Lakeshore Drive being one of them, from previous accesses being constructed. Same with Victoria Road is another one where we're trying to limit access points to that road. Prairie Valley Road as well. So it's very much something that they're always looking to do, is to eliminate access points. And we've made the change to our driveway access bylaw to do so if there is an alternative solution for driveway access. And I do want to mention as well, I'm just looking at my GIS here online here, and the existing Lakeshore Drive road right of way is quite narrow, because it's quite a large width. It's over 20 meters width of road right of way, and the actual road pavement doesn't start till another further 6 meters past the property line. So it does probably look like it would be much further in front of the other homes, but it's because the road right of way is actually taking up so much space of that front yard area. It's another further 6 meters before you hit the edge of the asphalt.
Question?
So wouldn't that suggest that in that particular location, and I can see the principle of having access or restricting accesses on collectors, but you make one rule and apply it everywhere. In this particular case, there seems to be an additional 6 meters of unpaved area between the pavement and the front of the house, and then and the option is about as small as it possibly can get in a laneway. Shouldn't that sort of also be considered?
Through your worship to Councillor Barkwell, I think primarily especially the small nature of the width of these lots is the more access, like for driveways, that people backing out into Lakeshore Drive is creating safety issues, and so that's the primary reason why our Public Works Department doesn't recommend the driveway access as continuing to come off of Lakeshore Drive, as it creates a safety issue with especially the narrow lots. We do allow one access per lot from the road if it's permitted. So it would could have pretty much concrete all the way through Lakeshore Drive, and limit any opportunity for a sidewalk, or as well as perhaps visibility if there's lots of cars parked on all these associated driveways and they're all backing out, and perhaps cause a safety issue.
Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Peak and then Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is to our planner. Brad, is there precedence in planning? My understanding is that planning doesn't set precedents.
Through your worship to Councillor Peak, I'm not too sure what you mean by your question. Sorry. Precedent for what? What do you mean?
That I can't make an argument that the precedent is that it's already happened elsewhere, so I should be able to do it here.
No, that's true. You're right. Especially when it comes to variance applications, as an example, if council has this discretion to make a decision for every single property alone in its context, and just because one property was successful with an approval in one location doesn't mean that context should apply to another situation. But in this regard, when we're looking at the streetscape and the neighborhood of Lower Town, we're looking at other examples of, is this a good fit for the neighborhood character of the area, and that's why we think at the staff level this proposal does fit in with that neighborhood character that has changed in Lower Town in recent years.
Thank you for your clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. Just regarding the neighbor to the north's comment about questioning whether she can continue to access her utilities in her building, is it possible, Brad, to require or request that the home builders do not put a fence on the north side of the property so that the neighbor can always ensure her ability to access her utilities? Thank you.
Yeah, council can decide to put any type of condition as part of their rezoning approval discussion tonight.
Thank you. So I'm going to call for a third time for anybody in the public who would like to comment. Please step up to this podium.
Regarding the front setback, keeping it in line with the newer buildings that are directly south of it. One thing to consider is the access to the parking in the back. That's a very narrow alley, and between one neighbor's garage and another neighbor's fence, which they get to have, it's a very restricted turning radius right there. So that'll affect their ability to park any vehicles back there easily, let alone 6 of them doubled up as is in the drawings.
Thank you. Anybody else for a final time? Please come up to the podium.
Oh, I turned it off, sorry. Is that on Beaver Street, those are 2-story buildings, not 3-story. Is that correct? To the planner? So they're 2 stories with a roof top, like their roof is a normal roof and it's not a patio roof. So they are not as intrusive. And that look would be great, but like for the new building, but just, I think you had said they were 3 stories, but on Beaver Street, they're not. They're 2 stories. Is that correct?
If I may, your worship, to answer that question, I was referring to the immediately adjacent property to the south of this property. It's a 3-story single-family dwelling,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, no, there is some smaller, newer homes on Beaver Street that are 2-story, like you're referencing. That's also a newer development.
They seem to fit the community. They have garages in the back. They do have basement suites. And then they're 2 stories. So those are nice houses, but that aren't blocking views, I find. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for the final time? Yep.
Yeah, back to the laneway access. I don't know if anybody in the chamber or in the house here has been to those laneways behind those houses. I can't get my Ford Tundra through those laneways, so God help if there's ever a fire back there in any one of those units, because a fire truck ain't getting those down those laneways. I can assure you that. And if this new building goes in, that's going to impede it that much more. And I think, just back to this, call it precedence or not, but at the end of the day, there was the 3 most recent builds down there, and no disrespect to the applicant, but all 3 had to incur variances during the build, and not one of those variances were turned down. So I don't have any optimism or competency knowing that a variance will be turned down. It won't be. That's the nature of the land as it seems. That's the pessimistic view. So the neighborhood's like, well, it's just a free for all. Build and they shall come. So I can only imagine that this build, they'll run into some problems. They'll apply for a variance and the variance will be approved. So that's why the neighborhood doesn't have any trust in these new builds. And again, back to the laneway, if you've ever been back there, a fire truck ain't getting those down that laneway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else for a final time? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Just a question through our planner. You indicated earlier the property to the north, even with a fence, would still be 1.5 meters?
I'll have to double check that here quickly. Because they do have steps that are projecting. Sorry, I'll have to get back to you, Counselor. I'll have to dig into the parent application file and determine what the actual setback amount would be.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question then. I'm just going through the notes here and I'm not seeing it off the top of my head, but this has been run by our fire department.
Yes.
And what I was seeing here, response time is 10 minutes from the fire hall. And that's all I'm pretty much seeing. Any other things that you can enlighten us on?
Sure. Yeah, because of the 3-story structure level, it would require also fire sprinkling, which is also something that has been already communicated to the applicant.
Okay, just a question, the corporate office for clarification. If the director of development service has to get back to us on something, would that be new information? It would be. So,
Okay, I can quickly look it up here if council is patient with me. Or maybe the applicant would know as well off the top of his head.
Councillor Betts.
Just reviewing the drawings of the parking, I do find it, the likelihood that 6 people are going to park back there in that tight formation would be a challenge. I do concur with the neighborhood
Sorry to
owners.
interrupt. We'll discuss, we'll just have questions now, and then we'll discuss it during the council meeting. So while we wait, I'll just ask for a final time if there's anybody in the public who would like to make a comment. Marianne, go ahead. Thank you. If you could state your name and civic address for the record, please.
Marianne McDonald, 6505 McDonald Place. I don't see why the duplex or the duplex that they're proposing could not be in conformity with the ones that are on Beaver. And given that there is an open parkway across the street, I still do not understand why there needs to be a rooftop terrace. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're just waiting for, unless anyone else in council has any questions. Go ahead, Sarah. You're only really allowed 3, but.
That's right. Just wondering if I may, does the applicant plan on residing in one of the units?
That's not really directly related to the variance requests, but you could ask him off camera if you want. Director of Development Services.
Yeah, so I apologize, just looking a little more deeply at the proposal here. So the interior side yard setback is proposed 1.5 meters, but that steps that are proposed to project all the way up to the property line. So there would be something that could potentially be of an issue going right up to the property line. I imagine there would be in the ground there. These aren't above ground steps. These are to do with the grade difference between the rear yard and the front yard. But they would be within that 1.5 meter setback.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, one more, Councillor Barkwell.
Okay, so with that knowledge, the proposed, that would requires another variance, doesn't it?
No, because these steps are allowed to project into the yard setback.
I'm looking at your table here, the zoning comparison proposed. So your proposed RDH site specific, and there's a step projection into setback row. And RSD1, you could go 0.6 meters on an interior side setback. And then the proposed RDH site specific, it says 3.2 meters, and that doesn't really seem applicable because that's more than the side setback is. So I'm wondering what exactly the rules are here.
Yeah, so that step projection is actually for, if you look at the design of the house, it's actually for the front yard. That's why it's at 3.2 meters. So it's proposed to project from 4.5 meters to 3.2 for the front steps, for an access point to get to that main level, main story level of the structure, not the side yard.
So what would the rule be for the side yard? There has to be a rule on what the step projection for an interior side yard would be.
Yeah. I'll have to get back. I'll have to look that up again here. Sorry, on our zoning bylaw. I do want to mention to council while I am loading up my the zoning bylaw here that that a lot of these design considerations can also be determined at the building permit stage. And if there is the need for design changes in order to meet our zoning bylaw, then the applicant can usually make those changes. Like this is still very conceptual drawings. That's why the applicant as well doesn't know exterior cladding as an example or colors yet. You know, I think that this could be figured out following the rezoning stage, but I will look at it here.
So we're waiting again, or?
Yeah, I apologize.
All right. Okay, go ahead, please.
The front steps, to me, are not the issue, so I'd like to separate that issue from those side steps, particularly on the north side. If this variance goes through as it is, I will lose all access to that side of my house because of the placement of the outside wall and its elevation in relation to my house. And definitely the bottom of the steps and, according to the drawing, the ramp, also part of the sidewalk to allow the basement back bedroom to have a window, will definitely block my access to my house. There's no doubt there.
Go ahead, Director of Development Services.
Yeah, it says, okay, just looking up now, for the in case of interior side yard, the projection, it can't be 0.6 meters into the minimum side yard setback. So if it's 1.5, then that would allow it to go up to, I guess that would be 0.9 meters away from the, or yeah, 0.9 meters into the setback.
Does that work for you, Councillor Barkwell?
Yes, it's an answer.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to declare the first public hearing closed. Thank you very much for participating. Council will debate it and at the beginning of the council meeting. Public hearing number 2 at 11612 Victoria Road South. And I'll turn this to our Director of Development Services to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. If I can just get the slides up. Okay, thank you. So the district's in receipt of a similar type of application as for a duplex, two duplex buildings for 11612 Victoria Road, as well as the rezoning from RSD1 to RDH and site-specific provisions to allow for the construction of 2 front-back duplex buildings at this location. This application as well as also has a associated subdivision application. So the applicant is proposing to subdivide this parcel east-west and then create 2 lots that with one duplex building per lot. That would be front back facing Adams and Victoria Avenue. Next slide. The OCP designates this area as low density residential, which accommodates duplex forms of housing. The current zoning for the subject property is RSD1, which is residential medium lot. Next slide. I mentioned that similar to the previous proposal, that this application as well is looking for site-specific provisions to allow for the 2 front-back duplexes, reduction of the minimum lot area for duplex housing from 850 meters squared to 303 meters squared, to reduce the minimum width for duplex housing from 25 meters to 10.6 meters to facilitate the subdivision, as I already mentioned, and then as well to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 6 meters. Next slide. I mentioned already 2 front back duplex buildings are being proposed, so it's a total of 4 units. You can see these elevation drawings provided by the applicant here. Next slide. Here's again a comparison of the existing RSD1 zoning versus the proposed site-specific RDH zoning. The reductions in lot area and lot width are to accommodate I mentioned 1 duplex building on each lot being proposed, and as well the proposed subdivision for those dimensions of the existing parcel. Next slide. So in terms of the site plan, you can see, again, similar to the previous proposal, our works department is recommending that parking is to come off Adams Avenue versus Victoria Road. So all of the proposed parking stalls are proposed to come off of Adams Avenue, including a single attached garage in the units that are facing Adams Avenue. Next slide. And here are just the floor plans proposed for the building. It's a 2-story building, fairly small duplex units, so hopefully on the more affordable side. You can see on the main floor, only one of the units, the one facing Adams Avenue, has a front attached garage, while the other one has a flex room on the other side facing Victoria Road. Sorry. Next slide. So in order to accommodate, again, the parking all being allocated at the rear yard, the applicant is requested a rear yard setback to basically reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 to 6 meters, which is the minimum requirement for a parking stall is 6 meters. This would also even out the front back duplexes with a 6 meter setback on either side. So it'd be kind of a mirror image of itself across the middle of the property. As well as part of the subdivision proposal, there's a significant amount of road dedication that the district will be requiring as part of that subdivision, including a total of 4 meters coming off of Victoria Road, and then a total of 3 meters coming off of Adams Avenue. And as well, the developer would be required to reconstruct Victoria Road and install a new sidewalk on Victoria Road as well. Next slide. The applicant has provided us a streetscape here of what the 2 front back duplexes will look like. Again, they will look primarily like 2 smaller single family dwellings from the roadways from either Adams or Victoria. Next slide. I mentioned the district's OCP encouraging a range and diversity of housing options and to diversify from predominantly a single family housing stock in urban areas with access to community services. The OCP also encourages residential growth outside of areas that avoid natural and hazardous areas, as well as wildfire risk, which this is, again, another area that would be well suited to some additional density. Next slide. The OCP recommends an upper limit for the low density residential designation of 22 units per hectare. And the proposed duplex building with 2 suites equates to a total of 41 units per hectare for this proposal. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'll open it to the floor or to the public. First of all, if the applicant is present and would want to say anything, I would ask no. Okay. So any members of the public who would like to come up and comment?
Yeah, my name is Rune No, and I'm on 11618 Victoria Road. So I'm put in the corner of the southeast corner of Adams and Beavis. And I know that's a very, very busy place when the school drop off and the school pickup is. It's kids walking, kids and bikes and cars and trucks and everything else. I'm just wondering during construction time, if it could be put in that there will be no heavy traffic during those time slots. And then my other concern is all the neighboring homes are single family homes, and these 2 will tower over everything else there. So I kind of think it will look a bit out of place. Other than that, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public? Any comments? I'll ask a second time. Any comments from the public? Council, any questions? No. For a third and final time, any comments from the public? Then I'll declare this public hearing closed, and we'll move on to the regular council agenda. Thank you. So I'll call the regular evening meeting agenda, our council meeting open for November 14th, 2022. Any introduction of late items, corporate officer? No late items. Approval of agenda, if I could get a motion. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? That's carried. No minutes to adopt. And so we'll go straight into bylaws from the public hearing. 5.1 at 12210 Lakeshore Drive South. And we'll turn this over to the Director of Development Services.
I don't have any other further presentation on this.
Okay, so I'll open up to council for discussion. Or if somebody wants to bring a motion forward, one or the other. Councillor Peak.
I'd like to place a condition that there be no fence, as Michelle Tedesco had spoken of. I'm not quite clear on which side that refers to. Perhaps that could be clarified.
I believe the request was the north side. So, so you wish to bring forward a motion to be read for a third time with a condition being placed on it that there no fence be allowed on the north side of the property?
I do.
Okay, corporate officer, does that work as a motion? Yeah. Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Don't see a seconder. You'll seconded, Councillor Betts. So we'll put that on the floor for discussion. Councillor Barkwell.
I suppose we're discussing the reading of the motion for a third time as well as this addition of the fence. I don't have a problem with the fence, but I kind of have a problem with the variance. Well, in particular, the variance for the front setback. If you look at the report that's with the public hearing and they have the GIS image, you can see that the people on the west side of the lakeshore there have a bonus in that the pavement is very offset to the east, and they're all parallel parking. You can see the cars parallel parking right in the houses immediately to the north, and there's lots of room for parking and access on the front of that property. And so I don't think it should be pushed forward. I think it should stay the same as the previous or the houses immediately to the south, and keep it uniform, because although considerations such as backing into busy streets and stuff is a genuine consideration, I contrast this one a lot with the Victoria Road one, where obviously, Victoria is far busier and only going to get busier, and the alley there is like 10 meters wide or so, and the alley at this one is 15 feet. So they're different situations entirely, and for that reason, I don't think I can go with the motion even as amended. And also, I would urge that if it is defeated and the developer goes back to the drawing board, there's no legal obligation as far as I can see, but I would like to see some sort of moral obligation to work with the neighbor to the north and ensure their access.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Richard, for that well-considered point. I agree with you. I think that there's still much to consider about the neighbor's ability to continue to access the utilities in her home and to be assured of that, as well as maintaining the character of Lower Town. So thank you, Richard.
Okay, anybody else with any comments, discussion? So I'll call the question. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Trainer.
Yeah, I don't have a real problem with the development, but I just, the fact that Michelle, the neighbor that spoke, said that she won't be able to access the side of her house, like that concerns me. And the lots down in Lower Town are a bit funny, like they're a little bit different. And so when we do these rezonings, I just think, this is going to happen over time, bit by bit. I think we just, need to take a little bit extra time because we have such differences in the houses down there to make sure that whatever we pass is working for the neighbors. So I just would like to be reassured that she can access and get in there properly. And so for that reason, I won't be supporting this, but I would definitely reconsider it and take another look at it if those issues can be cleared up. And then I do agree with Councillor Barkwell as well on the setback for the front side of the house. Thanks.
Councillor Peak.
This is directed to our development, our planner. Brad, if we kept the setback, if we didn't do a change on the setback, how does that affect the parking? So if we keep it aligned with the other ones, how does that affect the parking?
Yeah, I can explain to council the process as to how we got to this plan and why the front setback variance was requested. Is initially the applicant was proposing parking stalls and driveway accesses coming off of Lakeshore Drive for the lower level unit for each of the duplex units for each parcel. So again, mentioning our public works comments, we're trying to restrict those accesses from Lakeshore Drive. We directed the applicant to amend their plans to remove those accesses, and they in order to do that, and because they didn't have enough width with their the existing skinny lots they had to do a tandem parking stall in order to accommodate all of their parking requirements on site, which is a 2 parking stalls, basically 1 car parking right behind another, which is adding, you basically need 12 meters before you can hit your structure, your building. So in order to accommodate those 2 cars parking behind each other coming off the lane, they had to move forward the whole building on the site into the front yard setback.
If I might, may I?
Yes, please.
Edgar's house, which is the single tall skinny one, don't know the address. He has his front yard paved. Would be possible with the ones that we have now if we didn't do that setback change? And I understand why we're saying we want to diminish the driveways onto the collector. But Edgar's place, he can turn, I mean, he has the opportunity to either back in, or there's some, because of the meter that's not paved in the front that could be, there's actually quite a bit of space to move around there.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're recommending not going into the collector road, in fact, I think it works on that one property. I just wonder why it can't work on this one.
Did you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if there was a question there. Sorry, or if it was a comment.
I guess the question would be, why does it work on one property and wouldn't work on another property in terms of accessing the collector?
Again, this is a recent change. It was an amendment to our driveway access bylaw, I think in March of 2021. So those buildings to the south of this subject property, they wouldn't have been subject to our driveway access bylaw because it had been recently changed. And it's again something that our public works department has been fairly strong on, is limiting those access points and to eliminate the kind of the safety issues of people backing out onto collectors.
Okay. Councillor Van Elfen, did you have anything?
Well, I'm thinking also that with the setback, you could, right now you got two vehicles in the back on the alley, tandem. You could split the difference. You could have parking in the front and you can still have parking in the back. You could have single vehicle parking in the back for maybe the resident that lives on the basement suite. And I think the basement suite's a novel idea. I think it's great. But also you could have parking in the front for two vehicles that live in the upper unit. I understand the service, the bylaw or the concerns the public works and their access bylaw, but is it applicable to every development in Summerland? You know, I mean, it makes sense in certain areas. And there's no doubt in my mind. But in this area, and we heard from the residents in the area how narrow that back alley is. Now we're going to put 6 cars in that little confined area and hope they can get in and out. If you had 4 in the front, 2 in the back, it would make way more sense. But that's my thought. I can't support this. I think there's other options available. And I understand, you know, why Public Works wants to see it this way. I understand that, but not every situation is the same. So I think we got to look at them on one-offs. We just can't take one rule and paint the whole town with it, is my thought. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
I don't know if it's even necessary to say this after hearing what everybody has said, but it's not unusual. It's a problem. You have a policy, and you have to have a policy. It's an important, essential starting point for staff. And then for the inevitable variations and such like that, then somebody has to make a decision as whether that policy meets the particular unique circumstances of a location, and that's our job. And I think it's well within our purview to make the exceptions to policy.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. The zoning amendment bylaw number 2022-03 1 be read a third time with the condition no fence be built on the north line of the property. All in favor? All opposed? So we're all opposed. That's defeated. Bylaw number 0.52, 11612 Victoria Road South, Director of Development Services.
Yeah, I have no other further presentation on this one as well. Just the bylaw is ready for third reading and adoption if council so chooses.
Okay, would somebody like to put a motion on the table, please? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 2022-034 be read a third time and adopted.
Second, Councillor Betts. Any discussion? Councillor Betts.
I think that Victoria Road in that location is really ripe for some new developments, more families close to downtown with some really kind of some small homes on small profiles that I think would really serve Summerland well to try and look at redeveloping in these areas that have sidewalks, that have schools, that have parks. I think this could be really positive for our community to bring more families to this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Trainer?
Yeah, I like this proposal. I like that they're small houses and they would be suitable for families. It brings more options to that area. The only concern I have is the parking on Adams. Essentially, you're going to have a row of potentially 6 vehicles, and the half of the duplex that faces Adams is going to be basically looking out onto their neighbors or the back side of their duplex's vehicles. I mean, that's the only thing. It's just a lot of cars kind of for 2 properties. But I think the fact that we need more housing like this outweighs that concern of mine. So I'll be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. No further comments. Councillor Peak?
I too believe that this area is exactly the kind of area that we want to see this smaller home and more occupancy available. And I think it's a time to be doing it.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. This is my report. We'll give this a try. It was a busy first week for the new council. We were each sworn in on Monday at our inaugural meeting. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, together with the district's senior management, we attended a workshop on effective governance led by George Cuff, who's a nationally renowned local government guru, author of 10 books on local government and 4-term former mayor in Alberta. We've also had presentations from each of the district's department heads outlining their core responsibilities and work that's being carried over from the previous term. It's important that council has these orientation and governance sessions early in our term to ensure we get off onto the right foot. The regional district of Okanagan and Similkameen, better known as RDOS, also had its inaugural meeting last week on Thursday, when Councillor Van Alphen and I were sworn in as directors and Councillors Barkwell and Trainer were sworn in as alternates. Friday, of course, was Remembrance Day, and I'd like to thank the Royal Canadian Legion Summerland branch for organizing the public ceremony at the Cenotaph in Memorial Park. Deputy Mayor Trainer joined me to lay the wreath on behalf of the municipality and the people of Summerland. I have to say, after a couple years pause due to the pandemic, it was encouraging to see the community return in such large numbers to hear the rolls of honor of fallen Summerland soldiers and to pay their respects. What wasn't so encouraging was news the next day that thieves had broken into the Legion overnight and stole a sum of money, including the proceeds of the Poppy Fund that was meant to go to veterans. Such an appalling act doesn't represent the Summerland most of us know. The Summerland most of us know is the one where residents responded by coming out to the Legion yesterday to make donations to help replace the stolen funds, and in return, receiving a sandwich and soup from Chef Andy. I understand a GoFundMe page has also been set up if people wish to donate. Looking ahead over the next few weeks, Council, together with senior management, will be undertaking a strategic planning process to establish Council's priorities for the next 4 years. We'll also be heading into budget discussions for the 3 utilities, water, sewer, and electrical. Earlier today, we set the schedule of meetings to review the general operating and capital budgets. These deliberations will be held throughout January. Finally, I would like to say Light Up is back. After a hiatus, again, due to the pandemic, the 35th Festival of Lights will be back in its full glory and at its traditional time on Friday, November 25th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in beautiful downtown Summerland. Also returning are the associated events Light Up the Vines, Light Up the Arts, and Light Up the Library. In recognition of the importance of Light Up to the community, the District of Summerland is providing $20,000 and logistical support for this year's event. Many thanks to the Chamber of Commerce and its partners for their organizational work and commitment to bringing this marquee event back to the community. More further information can be found on the website summerlandlightup.com. Hope to see you all there. Now we'll turn to the CEO. Try and top that.
Can't be done, can't be done. Thank you, Your Worship. On behalf of staff, I'd like to start by welcoming Council to your first regular meeting since your inaugural meeting day. Special congratulations to you, Mayor Holmes, as you put on the mantle of mayorship, and to you, Councillor Traynor, with your appointment as the Deputy Mayor as of January 1. We look forward to serving and working with Council over the next 4 years, and we're excited about the many projects and priorities we will be working on together. With the year's early season snowfall, staff have been plowing and sanding roads and shoveling sidewalks, and I'm proud to say the team rose to the challenge, and especially that conditions could be made safe in the downtown area quickly so that Remembrance Day ceremonies could proceed unencumbered. Residents will note that in certain areas we've had to stockpile snow, and we do apologize for any inconvenience this may cause in some of our parking spaces. Due to the sudden plunge into the unseasonably cold weather and snowfall, the Giants Head Road project is wrapping up for the season. As noted in our most recent newsletter, we had hoped that we would finish the paving on the last stretch this year, but Mother Nature gets the last word on our construction window, and she has closed it. We are at the mercy of the paving plants being open for hot mix asphalt, and it has to be consistent of at least +5 degrees for paving to proceed. We will return to the project as soon as possible next year, and in the meantime, the contractor will do what they can to move aside equipment so the road is more easily passable through the construction areas in the meantime. On the flip side, the warm fall has delayed the leaves falling from the trees throughout the community. As a result, we will be offering an additional unlimited yard and garden waste curbside collection. The dates for this event will be on the regularly scheduled curbside days during the week of November 29th to December 2nd. Many residents experienced broken branches and trees with the snowfall, and I'd like to remind folks that we can also pick up those as well during the unlimited yard and garden waste collection if they are prepared properly. For more information on preparing yard and garden waste material for pickup, residents should visit the community updates page of our website. We have installed porta toilets for the winter season at key areas in the community where people continue to frequent in the winter months. This is because we have to shut the water off at our regular facilities during the late fall and winter period to avoid freezing the lines. Porta toilets are installed at Rotary Beach, Peach Orchard Campground at the pickleball courts, the Dale Meadows Temporary Dog Park, and the district also pays the regional district to maintain the pit toilet on Trans-Canada Trail, which remains open in the off-season. For this year, we're also once again placing a porta toilet in Memorial Park, given the increased use of that park during the winter months, particularly with our new destination playground and the number of people walking their dogs through the park on leash, since council's changed the bylaw to allow dogs in the park for that purpose. The district is undertaking a master planning process for the rodeo grounds, which is 74 acres of beautiful parkland on the west side of the district. The project consultants are in the initial stages of completing a site assessment and gathering input from the public. Anyone interested in providing input into the master planning process is welcome to attend the Summerland Rodeo Grounds Master Plan Open House on Wednesday, November 23rd, anytime between 4:30 and 6:30 at the Rodeo Grounds Clubhouse at 18707 Bathville Road. For those who are unable to attend in person, there will also be an online survey where you can submit additional feedback. For more information about this project, for the link to the survey, visit the District of Summerland website and check out the project information. Finally, I wanted to mention that starting this week, we'll be producing a council highlights document for the media and for the public within 2 days following each regular council day of meetings. The document will provide a high-level summary of council's discussion and associated decisions for the meetings that day. Streaming and recording of council meetings will continue, as this document is not meant to replace or modify any regulatory requirement for the official recording and publishing of minutes of the meeting. The council highlights will be posted on the website under the Your City Hall heading, but people can also sign up to the email group councilhighlights@summerland.ca to have these highlights sent directly to their inbox, and that information's on the website as well. I'm sure this will be a welcome compendium for those who like to follow the discussion topics of council but do not have the time to review the meeting package or meeting recordings. With that, I conclude.
Thank you. Any questions for the CAO? No? Okay, so moving on to public comment opportunity for any agenda item. Nobody wants to step up? Nobody online? Corporate officer? No? Okay. So section 9, development reports. The September and October development services report, and we'll turn this to Director of Development Services.
Worship. So this is my first time presenting to the new council with regards to our monthly activities. As I presented to your orientation, we report monthly on development services activities for statistics for the different areas of development services. So there's been a bit of a break with the election process. So we've lumped in 2 months, September and October of this year, together for this purpose of this presentation. Next slide, please. So in terms of development applications year to date, so far in 2022, we have a total of 61 planning applications submitted so far this year. This compares to a total of 78 applications to the end of October in 2021 and 69 applications in 2020. The district, we are receiving some significant, more complex rezoning OCP applications as well as subdivision applications, but not as much on the development variance permits. You can see that through this chart. There's been a reduction in the number of variances requested, as well as minor development permits as well. Recently, over the last 2 months, we've seen an uptick in the number of ALC applications, and council will be seeing those come forward to a future council meeting. Next slide. For building permits, this table here provides both months of September and October individually, and then year to date for the full balance of 2022. Total construction value year to date for the end of October, we're at $46 million, 82 thousand dollars. The total number of permits is still on pace to be larger than last year, but then the amount of construction value now has slowed down in the last 2 months from the pace that we had in the summer. And as a result, so the district's no longer on pace to exceed the number of construction value we experienced in 2021, which we initially thought we might break another record, but at this rate, I don't think we will for the balance of this year. Next slide. For bylaw enforcement, this is our monthly bylaw enforcement files that we received. We had a total of 78 files generated in September, of which 11 are still open to date. Of the 78 files generated, 16 were generated by district staff. Next slide. For October, it's fairly similar as well. There's a total of 75 bylaw enforcement files open in October, 13 of which are open. And then of those 75 files, district staff generated 15 of those. Next slide. And for our year-to-year comparison, just in comparison the different types of complaints that we were receiving, you can see that our new good neighbor bylaw, which is, I don't know if you can still call it new, it's been about 1.5 years since we've adopted that new bylaw, is now kind of driving a lot of our complaint files from historical. You can see that increasing for 2022. We're also seeing some increases in signage regulations that could be related to the election. I'm not too sure. for total year-to-date complaint files, we're up to a total of 778 total bylaw complaint files, and only 52 are remaining, which is kudos to the bylaw enforcement team for closing these files as quick as they can. And other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on just the general statistics or any specific application that's in the actual council report. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Question through to our planner. On the good neighbor bylaw, is there any statistical information? Is there any one thing that's driving those numbers?
I think it varies per season. There's there's a lot of things that are been lumped into that good neighbor bylaw. Noise is one, unsightly properties is another, and that has been a bit of a theme for our bylaw enforcement staff, is untidy, unsightly over the last year, I would say, and year and a half. And now those are a little more sticky and harder to enforce, but we are trying to have a more active process and program for untidy, unsightly, and so that's lumped into that bylaw as well. But seasonal, it could be as well, related to just other perhaps nuisance issues. So during the tourism season, as an example, noise is often one that clamps up in that season, which would increase the number of complaints we get during the summer months.
Anyone else? Councillor Barkwell?
Yeah, in the bylaw statistics or the bylaw infraction statistics, you have district staff generated and bylaw staff generated. Is district staff generated, is that something that, say, Public Works people have noticed and have referred over to bylaw to address and things like that?
Yeah. It could, sorry, through your worship, to Councillor Barkwell, it could also be another department area. It could be our building officials. It could be saying that there's a build without a permit in place occurring, and then, or it could be even our finance department with our utilities, and sometimes our bylaw staff having to get involved with an unpaid billing situation because it's become a bit negative, perhaps with the current landowner, so they might track that as a file as well. Yeah, so there could be a number of things, but mainly I would say Public Works, and it's generally infractions on the public road right away. So trees overhanging the road, snow removal. Sometimes their Public Works is the staff are the ones to say that this property is an issue for snow removal, as an example, right? So.
Any other questions? Not, if somebody could bring them, bring the motion forward for information. Does that make sense? Bring it forward for information. Thank you, Council. Receive it for information. Thank you. Councillor Trainer seconding. All in favor? That carries. 9.2 occupancy agreements with the RCMP. Corporate officer.
Thank you to the chair. So before council's consideration entering into new occupancy agreements to outline the terms and conditions of the potential continued occupancy for the RCMP detachment by the Missing Persons Office and the Canadian Firearms Office. The proposed occupancy agreement for the Missing Person Office commences on July 15th, 2022 and expires on July 14th, 2027 with an option to extend for an additional 5 years until July 14th, 2032. The proposed occupancy agreement for the Canadian Firearms Office commences November 1st, 2022 and expires on October 31st, 2027 with an option to extend for an additional 5 years, which would be until October 31st, 2032. As both previous agreements have now lapsed, the proposed agreements are backdated and the RCMP will issue back payments once the agreements have been executed. The occupancy fees for both offices were not increased during the terms of the previous occupancy agreements, and as such, staff recommend an initial increase of 10% to the occupancy fees for the first year for both agreements, followed by annual 3% increases to keep up with inflation. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Peak?
Through you, your worship, are these agreements similar to the dollar amounts that would be done in the Lower Mainland?
To my understanding, yes, we did look at what others are charging and it is relatively the same.
Thank you. My other question, if I may, is you said till 2032.
So it's an addition, or it's an initial 5-year term, and then with a 5-year option to extend on top of that. So it actually, the agreement itself would be for 10 years.
The report I had said 2027, so that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, 2032 sounds like a long time. Any other questions? Councillor Van Elfen.
Move staff recommendation.
Okay, second. Councillor Barkwell. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Next, it would be the quarterly procurement report. That's the corporate officer as well. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, before council is the report of procurements over $250,000 awarded for Q3 2022. These awards include electrical inventory items, the solar and storage engineer procurement and construction, the managed print services, which is the replacement of printers within the district, and a new fire truck. And with that, again, happy to take any questions.
And the Caterpillar wheel loader? That too, yeah. Okay. Any questions? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. I just want to ask, when this went out to tender for the Caterpillar 950 wheel loader, were other brands considered, such as Case or Komatsu or John Deere or someone else, or would just usually CAT is the high end of any piece of construction equipment? And further to that question, is this the one for the compost facility? This new wheel loader?
So to answer your second question, yes, it would be the piece of equipment for the compost facility, but I would have to check with the manager of procurement to ask if other brands were considered.
And a further question, if I may. So if this brand new piece of equipment is allocated to the compost facility, would it not possibly, sorry, I'm getting into the weeds, better to keep that piece of equipment at Public Works and maybe take a used piece of equipment and put it at the landfill? I'm just thinking of wear or tear. Thank you.
Through the mayor, it's a good question, and I believe the answer in this case is it has to have certain capability with the height of the bucket for dumping. And also we are looking still at the possibility of, this is new to us, so the jury's still out on with whether we're actually going to need to get a bucket that does grinding. And that means we have to have the ability to put that bucket down, pick the other up, and the hydraulic controls. The piece of equipment that would be more antiquated at Public Works doesn't have the ability to do any of those things. So this is fairly customized piece of equipment in order to fit the need. But we did have the ability to drop the conveyor belt portion and find some savings there with this piece of equipment, adding a few pieces of functionality to this equipment. It's almost 8 o'clock, so I'm not entirely articulate tonight, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. Anyways, there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Peak.
Thank you. Having not been here, I'd like a little explanation on the management or managed print services. Is that software and the estimated cost on the first term potentially more than double if this is extended? So if I could have a little background, I would appreciate it.
Through the mayor. So the managed print services, it's not software, it's the actual purchase of new printers, scanners, photocopiers. So it's the new hardware. It's a lease, actually, I should say that. And then, sorry, what was the second part of your question?
The cost going, it could be potentially more than double if the time frame's extended. I'm assuming it's time frame.
Yeah, I can just give me 1 second and I'll look at the contract.
While she does that, I'll, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll just add a little color in the lines a little bit on this one. So we have obviously photocopier, printer, fax machine, scanner in the main building here that we've used for a long time that we own. The challenge with it has been that as time has gone by, the amount of repairs that it needs have been quite substantial. And so we're calling in the repair people, components are having to be changed, we're losing productivity. And as a result, the business case was done to determine whether or not we get back into the ownership of something or into a managed print service type of arrangement where we have a lease and then somebody owns the obligation for maintenance and repair and all that sort of thing. So it can look like a lot of money at the front end because you're paying for that certainty of somebody else's equipment. But at the same time, in the longer term, what we've seen is it's going to save us a lot of money on not actually owning and having to update and evergreen and increase the software capabilities and all that stuff to do with these devices, which, as we all know, are so central to the work that we do in the office environment. So I can say that our director of finance led out on this, and he can squeeze two pennies together and create a dime. So I know he's actually done a really good job of this. And I'm running out of material here, Kendra. We don't. Yeah, so we would have to find more out from Dana on your specific question beyond if the doubling is from the term, but I think it is for the additional 5 years. That's the doubling. In the third column, it does say plus the option to extend for additional 5 years. And then the fourth column mentions potentially more than double if it's extended. So I think intuitively that's the answer.
If I may, I really appreciate the explanation and even for the doubling makes sense to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note that the solar storage project is there, and I remember it being the scaled back project being considerably being under budget, and this number 5.2 million is considerably more under budget than what I remember discussing before. Does that mean that we'll have the funds there to do a road from where Prairie Valley, well, the existing access road, to make it of a size and quality that would be sufficient to service the housing that we hope to have up there? Because just because that would be such a better access than off Otley and having to do that corner right there at Morrow where it's quite steep and sharp.
CO?
Yeah, I know just specifically where the road is coming in. I can't recall the exact names and orientation, but what I can say is you're correct in your recollection. And right now we are cautiously optimistic that where the project came into with the D-scope, we should be able to build that road out without having to touch any of our original allocation from our money. So that's a positive thing. Now there is a relatively small contingency in here, so there could be still surprises as we go along, but so far things are on track, and we're feeling quite positive that we should be able to fund that part of the project as well with those within the grant dollars that were awarded to us.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the question is, I mean, I can see an access road being of one quality and size and width, and a road that was access to the housing development being of a greater quality and size, and was that funds going to be sufficient for that, a road that would service the housing? Or is it just going to be sort of an access grade?
Through the mayor, sorry for not being more clear on that. Yes, it is within our plans to build a proper road that would service the eco village as well, which is built to a wider state and a different design than would be more of just a service access road for maintaining solar equipment. So that is the type of road that we're talking about. And that is when I say we're cautiously optimistic, we'll be able to fund that within the existing grant monies and on budget. Without even touching perhaps our original allocation, that's what we're hoping for. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that and let council know if anything changes.
Okay. Anybody like to receive this information? Motion, please. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? That's carried. Item 9.4. 2022 General Local Election Report. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before council is the 2022 General Local Election Report that is required to be submitted to the governing body by the Local Government Act. This report is required to be submitted 30 days after the declaration of the official election results and must include a compilation of the ballot account statements, which is the attachment to the report. And staff are recommending that this report be received for information.
So you're filing it tonight? Okay. Councillor Peak.
I'll bring that motion forward.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Bett, the second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. So bylaws for adoption. This is kind of a carryover from the previous council where it was discussed, and so it's up for adoption now. Anybody want to hear anything about this, or do we just, somebody want to bring the motion forward? So, okay, Councillor Traynor, second, Councillor Van Elfen. Any discussion? It's for adoption. All in favor? And that's carried. No business arising. Notices of motion. Does anybody have a notice of motion? Don't see any. Information items. Does anybody want to pull out any of those letters and whatnot? Councillor Van Elfen.
Just, I think it's D, attachment D, that there's a new online course to support responsible conduct. And it's an online course. You can take it at your own convenience and your own speed. And I just thought it was quite interesting. And the other one I found very nice was the letter of support from or congratulations from our neighbors, the Penticton Indian Band, congratulating us on our election. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? And then we have the committee. Oh no, so I'll just get a motion to receive those for information. Yeah. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Traynor, all in favor? Carried. And now we have the committee commission minutes. Any questions or anything about any of those minutes? No, if we could get a motion to receive those. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Peak, and all in favor? That's carried. Council reports. So just want to ask council how we want to do these. Do you want me to go around it like previously, or does anybody, or do we want to, if anybody has a council report, just put up your hand and I'll call you out. How do we? Doesn't really matter to me. Councillor Traynor?
I think that instead of going around and saying nothing to report, I think if anybody has anything, that they want to share, then they just put up their hand and share it. I think that would save time and just make it a bit smoother.
Is everybody else good with that approach? Anybody violently opposed to that approach? No? Okay, so I'll ask the question. Does Anybody have anything to report? Holy geez. Councillor Van Elfen.
You've already touched on it, but and I mentioned it earlier today, how impressed I was with the Remembrance Day ceremonies, how many of our local people came out. And it was nice to see our RCMP members in their Red Surge and such huge community support, and also the flyover. It was so nice to see those airplanes flying over right at, at 11 o'clock. And it was, it's quite impressive. And it was just nice, after 2 years of COVID to see the support. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Peak.
Not a report, but a statement. I'd like to thank staff for all the organization, for the orientation that we've had so far and what is coming up. And I would also like to thank the outside staff for the work that was done at Memorial Park to prepare it for the Remembrance Day service. It was done very quickly on short notice, and that was very much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, don't see anyone else. So this will be our public comment period. Is anybody in the gallery? Any comments? No? Nobody online, I presume. And so I'll get a motion to adjourn. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? That